Hey, David.
Hi, Tom.
Thanks for joining me. We'll let some people file in here. Go announce that we got the live stream going. So we're going to look at stat blocks today from the Monster Manual 2024, which we should pick up our own copy of that at Winter Fantasy, right?
That's right.
That's when I'm going to get my copy. I'm not on the good list from Wizards yet.
Join the club.
Let's see here. There we go. Everything announced. If you're joining us on the live stream, leave in chat where you're from, who you are. And let's take a look at, first of all, the preview that they did here. So this one really goes into the details, everything you need to have on the, or need to know on the stat block. And the first thing that caught my eye right away is this plus 16 initiative for a creature with a 2 dexterity modifier.
Yeah, I was looking for the source of that, and I guess it's just general badassery that
I
gives
think
it
it's
that boost.
proficiency bonus times 2 plus dex. So it's like they're double proficient in initiative. And that's the Ancient Gold Dragon. If you look at the Imperium that Cody previewed, it has the same thing. It's plus 19, which would be 14 plus 5, so double proficiency plus dex. So I imagine maybe the high CR legendaries might be that way.
And that's probably pretty good because then, maybe one or two characters start before those creatures.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have a big alpha strike situation where everyone's beating the initiative number.
Right.
Which isn't that uncommon at those higher levels, and I'm not quite sure why. Just in my experience, people have enough.
Plus
juice.
19 is going to be hard to beat. That's for sure.
No doubt.
Plus 16, yeah. Okay, so there's that for the Ancient Gold Dragon. Let me share that. So then it's got some save modifiers built in, only 2 of them, which is interesting for a dragon. Maybe they only had 2 from before. I thought they had more, but maybe there's only 2 before.
Seems like usually they're more at this tier.
Mm-hmm. Blind sight to 60, different XP numbers if they're in their lair, different legendary resistances in the lair. And those haven't changed. It's just basically, sorry, player, your spell doesn't work. I like how they kind of brought actions together under Rend instead of having Claw, Claw, Bite. Just have one that does a lot more damage, hopefully.
Does it do enough damage? It seems a little...
Seems a little low.
For little low to me.
24 doing 71 on a Fire Breath, that's nothing.
Some characters out there that are fighting a creature like this, that's just a nuisance to have to subtract that kind of damage.
Yeah.
It's a duty, but otherwise it doesn't really.
Yeah, this should be 120, 130, I think. Because especially for fire, everyone's got resist fire, or a lot of people do. And then you're going to make your save. Well, maybe not a DC 24.
Those saves are bananas. We were talking about that in an earlier episode. And the save math for creatures at this level, it just dials up to something that is pretty much unattainable unless your character happens to have that stat at high and also happen to have proficiency for that save. Because advantage isn't going to help you meet that 26 save.
Yeah, no.
If you're not getting some heavy pluses on there.
And then spellcasting. So it's got, it's multi-attack. The dragon makes 3 rend attacks, can replace 1 with spellcasting, the Cascading Bolt, or a Weakening Breath. And, pet peeve of mine is Guiding Bolt's not defined here at all, so you gotta go look that up.
Yeah.
I remember all the way back in Queen of the Demon Web Pits. I think it was the first adventure I saw where they gave real abbreviated stats for spells with their monsters, and they really need that for sure. Flame Strike level 6. And
Well, you were
then,
talking about the abbreviated stats for monsters. You know they were kind of going back and forth on whether they were going to write out spells in the stat blocks and possibly present them as not exactly spells. What were we seeing? There was some kind of fire flower spell that was just the same as
Fireball.
fireball, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a spell. It was something that worked the same.
Yeah.
They've kind of arrived at a curious mix. Mostly they've leaned on just having spells listed as spells, and you got to look them up. I suppose that's not so bad if you're looking at this online on D&D Beyond or something, because you can click the link. I like that. But if you got a page through the book, what a slowing thing on the thing. And then we've got Banish here that stands out. It's not actually the spell Banish.
Yep.
So it's not by the book, something you could counter, and it kind of stands out as a little bit different. It's also got a little different rules because it does damage, whether you save or not, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a sucky spell. It just takes the character out of the fight.
Well, it's certainly not fun, no. But
yeah, one player, hey, sorry, thanks for coming to fight the gold dragon, but you get to sit out this fight. That's harsh.
Yes.
So they have legendary actions too. We saw the Green Dragon preview had reactions, and so we thought, oh, maybe they'll go reactions. Maybe there's still a mix, or maybe they switched back and are doing all legendaries. One nice thing with the legendaries is they are all one legendary, so they kind of balanced them to be just one, so you don't have to keep track of, was that I used 2 of my 3, or did I can't do this legendary because it takes 3 and I've already used 1, that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. Their pounce doesn't let them not provoke, so that's gonna be difficult when you're facing fighters that are sentinels.
Yep.
And dropping you or locking you down. Overall, I think it's pretty well done. I think the power level still feels like it's all over the place in some of these things. So that's that one. Let's look at we got some awesome art here. Just want to share this for a second. The Tarask art, just fantastic. They take a lot of criticism for their art, and there's plenty of art I don't like, but they have some amazing pieces for sure, and this is one of them.
Right. They wander around styles enough that there's something for everybody, and there's probably something that everybody's not gonna.
I think back to the original DMG and Player's Handbook, first edition, and it was line art, joke sketches of things. It's like, okay, it's not like that, at least. Silver Dragon here, and a bunch of now fiendish gnolls. I guess gnolls changed to fiends, kobolds changed to dragons. So how that's going to interact with the whole person, we'll see. I don't think it does, unless they're humanoid parentheses fiend or something like that.
I'll bet you that's how they go.
Yeah, I haven't seen the stat block for that one. They talk about a lot of different variants of vampires, and this is their low-end vampire familiar, their Renfield.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool, pretty flavorful.
This is a humanoid. I'm looking at this for the first time. I see.
Oh, you're seeing it the first time? Okay, yeah.
It's
so this is like a Renfield, partially converted to vampire, not all the way yet. The vampire can see through them. They do their Umbral Dagger attack, which is where they basically paralyze you when they bring you to 0. So that's spooky. Deathless agility to get away. So this way you can start fighting vampires and or vampire servants pretty quick. And they talk about a lot of different spectrum of vampires. So that's good. They have like 85 different new monsters, so they should see a lot of that. Then...
And it shines getting away, deathless agility, dash and disengage as a bonus.
Right.
And that makes sense.
Okay, so then we got Animal Lords. The art of this is kind of comical looking, but I'm thinking of Gord the Rogue in the Greyhawk books. Was he a cat lord in the end? I think he was. He was an animal lord at the end. And these things, look at their plus 19 initiative, so also probably 2 times proficiency plus their dex modifier. So, other games like MCDM, Straw Steel, or various other games, you can just basically alternate with the players, and one monster is going to go first. You can make it the big bad. And this kind of does that artificially or forces it. If you're fighting 2 of the big bads, hopefully you're not ever doing that. But if you're fighting 2, they're both going right at the start. So that is that one. And then we got the Gelatinous Cube, Dungeon Scouring Block of Ooze, Habitat Under Dark Treasure, any. And it's just pretty basic. I haven't compared its damage to what it did before. But that's looking like pretty good damage for a CR2. With 63 hit points in arm class 6, it won't last more than a round, though. Right?
No, that's not going anywhere.
It's got no resistances to anything except acid, and the party's not going to be doing acid to it, probably. So yeah, this thing will last a round, and then it'll be over. So your best bet is to secretly engulf someone in it. Put it at the bottom of a pit, like some horrible adventures have done.
It's only CR2, so what is this? A suitable foe for
First
second
level party,
characters?
second level party,
maybe first level.
Yeah.
And
first level, you'll kill them, right? Doing 12 damage on an average hit. So it's dropping first level guys down to 0 right away.
Oh, well, with that speed 15 feet,
You'll never get to them.
Here's a pro tip. When you see a floating skeleton or weapon gliding down the dungeon hall toward you and your first level,
yeah,
run.
Yeah. And then we had the Imperium. We saw this one already. This one's got the plus 19 initiative, legendary actions. And that's pretty much what we've seen for the stat block. So that's the new thing I noticed was the initiative. And we know legendary resistance and legendary actions. I do like that the legendaries are 1 each. Chat, what's your favorite thing that you've seen in the stat blocks so far? Or what questions do you have for the stat blocks? Let us know.
I do like the static initiative.
Yeah.
Where you just have a number, and if you beat that number, you go before the creature, and if you don't, you go after.
Yeah.
That seems like a nice streamlining feature, especially since I tend to sometimes I'll even roll initiative in advance for monsters and put it on my little index card. Now I don't even have to roll. Wow, what a time savings.
What I would do normally, like if I was getting ready for a convention to play, multiple games of the same adventure, is I'd normally break up the adversaries into 3 groups and have one go on 15 plus mod, one go on 10 plus mod, and one go on 5 plus mod. So they end up being spread amongst the players, and I'd just have it pre-done rather than having it all be 10 plus mod like the default is here. So that's another thing you can do. And that way you can kind of spread them out. And you can cheat and make the big bad guy the 15 plus mod. I'm not saying I ever did that, but I might have on the occasion.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now they don't need to cheat, though, with the plus 19 modifier. They should be in good shape.
You got that right.
All right. So I played In Search of the Unknown. Did you ever run or play that adventure, David?
I have neither run nor played it. That's the one with the blank spaces where some of the rooms were, and it was instructional because the intention was you'd roll up or, otherwise add your own things to the adventure in those spots.
So it was written by Mike Carr, and Mike is still gaming. I want to get him on a live stream if I can at some point. So I'm following up to try and find that. Mike also did the forward to the Player's Handbook. So if you look at the forward to the Player's Handbook, original Player's Handbook, Mike Carr, TSR Games and Rules Editor, 1978. So he wrote the Player's Handbook. He's got some advice here. And he has similar advice in B1. And it's really good advice, in fact, for for like advice I give on my my handouts for games that I run, I copy a lot of it from here. I copy a lot from here, copy a lot from Kelsey, Gary, of course, Gygax, and there's another one, Ben Milton. He had a good list that I copied from, but this was the old school first one, my car. And then this forward here, D&D players happily come in all shapes and sizes, even a fair number of women. Not in my experience, but I was told there were women playing back in the day, and there were. And
This is a joke that Tom's making. So
and the best part about this is it's like, you know, they're blind to appearance. They talked about how the people played, and they didn't talk about what they looked like or who they were or where they came from, and that's how D&D always was. So I like that. That's good stuff. Back to the game though, in Search of the Unknown, my car. So he's got instructional stuff.
a lot of instructional stuff.
Yeah.
I was paging through my giant hardcover of the adventure just before we went on the stream, and
Yeah,
wow, there's a lot of instruction in here.
there is.
A fun fact about my car there, at least up to a couple of years ago, he was one of a small number of folks who have been to every single Gen Con that has ever been held.
Wow. Let me stop sharing and reshare because it's saying I have lost screen sharing. So let me try this again here. It'll be a different one, but I'll get back to that. Search of the Unknown. Okay, so yeah, you got a lot of stuff. And then you have Legends. And I really like Legends. I feel like they're kind of a lost art. And I like giving the players, that kind of stuff going into the adventure. I like how Sursa does it in his adventures, where some of the legends, the players know if they're reliable or not reliable. And reliable means it's more likely to be true, maybe 70%, 75% true. And you can do that here by, just making the true ones say that they're reliable 75% of the time, do the inverse of it. So I like that. Then you get to the dungeons, got wandering monsters, which makes it, emergent for the DM to play it because it's going to be different every time. I really like that. And then if you come to the end of the adventure, and the adventure's got all these spaces where you fill in monster and treasure. So when I ran it recently, I really embraced just do it random and see how that makes it different for you as the DM. So you have this list of monsters, and they say use, say 18 on average. So I just rolled up 18 of these, and then I randomly put them in the rooms. There's like 56 rooms. So I rolled a D56 and rolled 20, 18 times, and threw them in the rooms. And then I randomly did the numbers, and then I did the treasure the same way. And ended up with one room had a goblin in it, and just one out of 8.
Okay.
And had one of the most valuable treasures in it. And so what I had it was the goblin had found this treasure, had found this gem, and was hiding it, trying to hide it. And this was like his ticket to freedom and riches. And unfortunately, the party found him and realized he was trying to keep something secret from them, and got the treasure from him. But things like that just kind of emerge from the randomness. And so as a DM, it was kind of fun. When you do this the first time, you feel like, oh, why didn't they do the work for me? But this lets you run it over and over and have different outcomes every time. So I kind of appreciated it.
Well, it was meant to be instructional, and there really wasn't any work other than rolling.
Just random rolls.
And then you get those delightful moments that always come up when you're rolling things randomly. And you get that opportunity to create something based on asking the question, I rolled this result. How can this be true? Well, what happened to set this up?
Yep.
And it's just such great fodder for creativity.
Yeah. Now, when I ran that, and I've run Shadow Dark similarly, I was mostly staying in turns the whole time, even during exploration. And I'm kind of I never liked that as a player before when DMs would do that. And I've tried it several times, and it just doesn't quite work for me. So I'm going to be doing a lot less of it, I think. when I run D&D, I don't do it like that at all. And I think it just speeds the game up so much more to have a party just act all together. But as a DM, it's important to never try and get like a gotcha on the party. Assume they're doing the right thing when they're exploring. The idea of turn by turn is they have to kind of tell you everything they're doing, and if they don't do it,
Right.
they didn't do it, right? But that gets old. I mean,
I think there's a definite tension. I was thinking about this a little bit earlier today. There's a little
yeah,
tension with that turn by turn. It's great because it does give the players each player gets a turn and everyone feels like they're participating. There's not somebody with a particularly forceful personality kind of running the show. And I
right,
like that a lot. I also like that you're spelling out what you're doing, and in a particularly dangerous dungeon environment, if someone's going to cross the room or touch the idol, it's kind of important to know where everybody is and what's happening.
yeah,
On the other hand, there's a lot of friction when everyone has to act together, when they're forming up around a doorway, or
right,
they're crossing a distance, or all those sort of things that, almost maybe are just the sort of things you'd fast forward past because they're not very interesting, or times when everybody in the party has to act together. Trying to coordinate that with turns gets to be a little bit slower. Plus, and I don't know if this is a plus or a minus, actually. I used to do turns sometimes when I'd be running with all ages tables. I'd be in the game store running a game, and there'd be young players and older players, especially with younger players. If you gave each person a turn and say, where are you moving? What are you doing? Pretty soon, everyone's scattered all
yep,
over the map. And,
yeah,
it's either a TPK or a total headache because
yeah,
everyone's split up, and it gets a little out of hand.
yeah, yeah. So I'll probably go more the group route. So I wrote this up for the d20play RPG that I'm working on. Exploration rounds. Trying to decide between 1 minute and 10 minutes when exploring like a dungeon or a site. 1 hour when outdoors or a settlement. 1 day when in the wilderness. And the GM checks for random encounters. The party leader describes the party actions, and then have a step where players can describe their individual actions, if any. So if they want to deviate and say, "Well, I'm actually going to do this," as opposed to search the room, like the party leader said, then you do that and you do that. Do the GM describes outcomes, count down the timers, and that's kind of how I'll go. Now, when I do combat, I'm always very sensitive to not doing a gotcha thing where I let players move, and then in between two moves, when the players are way separated, I say, "Okay, combat starts," and that's where you're at, because they're not really moving that way.
Yeah,
In reality, they're going to be kind of moving together as a group in theory, right? So
absolutely.
yeah. So I wrote it up there with initiative. When combat starts, first define your location, what you're carrying, then roll initiative. And that just lets you know, the group be together, as opposed to, oh, I gotcha. You moved your guy away from the party, then I called for initiative, so you're stuck. So
When
definitely
you were
avoid.
running B1, I assume you were doing random encounters.
Yeah,
And how did that work out? Did
it
you
worked
do
out.
it transparently? So you were saying, I'm rolling?
Yeah, I did it this way. So random encounters were 1 in 20 every round, and that made for probably about, in the course of a 3 hour, 4 hour session, 4 or 5 random encounters, I think, versus 20 set encounters in the dungeon.
Hmm.
And that's great because it gives you more variety and ways for the group to play groups against each other. Yeah.
Did
So
you feel like it shaped the way the party approached things? Did you feel like
I
some of the
don't.
encounters were a little bit of a time waster?
Right. Um, I don't know. It's like, in theory, if the party knows what's happening, they know they need to move fast, they might not search every door thoroughly, right? Because that's one more chance for a random encounter. And I don't know that they were congealed enough as a group to be taking advantage of that or even considering that. I think once you're set with a group and you know what you're doing and you know how often random encounters happen, and you know what, if you do something that might cause more random encounters, you can make that judgment. They hadn't got there yet. So they weren't really consciously making that judgment, I don't think.
Was the objective of this adventure as you ran it just to get in, get as much loot, and get out?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. This one had rumors, of course, which they could try and go find the rumored items. Like if you go here, let's see where the rumors are at the very front. There's talk about, I think, a magical fountain. They're talking about a magical stone. So they could, try and find that. Of course, we're going to try and find the location where the original creators of the dungeon, where their abode was, to find the most treasure. And they kind of did find that part. So yeah, it was just get treasure and get out. And then we were playing. This was like the second play test we had done for the Roll20. And one thing that I really like that seems to be really working good is for spells. So the biggest thing I've found for people to bounce off of Shadow Dark, which is another system I absolutely love, is that the spells just aren't reliable. If you're a wizard and you want to cast Fireball on a group of guys, there's a chance you don't. And that kind of sucks. You can't plan your turn. And clerics are the same way. Priests are the same way. There's a person dying. You want to go heal them. Well, you might be able to. You can't be sure you will. And so what I did is I just put the spellcasting roll in there still, but it's a roll to retain the spell instead of a roll to cast it the first time. So that gives you more power, of course, right? Because you have basically a one-time guarantee that you'll cast your spells. And every time you go to use a spell that it will work, unless you roll a 1. And I think you were playing using that system. What do you think of that system, David?
I think the roll to retain is better than Shadow Dark's roll to cast, and then if you fail, you're out of luck. That feels very frustrating. So I like being able to plan or expect it's going to work at least that one time. That's a plus.
Yeah.
I'm curious why, you could go any way you want, why you've decided to sort of evolve the Shadow Dark roll system for spells as opposed to maybe a spell slot or a spell point kind of system.
I just felt it was simpler, faster. People could get their characters ready to go quicker and get in the game faster. And that's one thing that I really like about Shadow Dark is you're up and running in like 5 minutes, right? And you don't feel like you missed much. You don't feel like, oh, I probably did half of these things wrong. You probably got them right. You're picking the spells, and there's obvious spells that do damage, and that's ones you pick. And you don't have to worry about, did I pick the right feat or not pick the right feat? You can roll stuff randomly. I like that aspect of it too. That's fun. Gives a lot of variety to characters. Cade, hey Cade, he said, everybody place your tokens, and when you are happy with where you are, roll initiative. That's what I normally say to the players.
That's Tom's.
That's my speech.
Catchphrase.
Yep. And try it and find out. That's my other one. I agree with that. I cast Toll the Dead and made an extra encounter roll. That definitely made me think again about my primary attack cantrip. Oh, right. Because it made sound. Roll to retain is greater than roll to cast. I definitely think it is. And God, I'd almost, if I was playing Shadow Dark, almost house rule it to do that.
I don't think you'd be the first.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So now one thing that I did notice is that this system of roll to retain combined with what I was doing for luck was too strong. So for luck, what I had on the last playtest was you can spend a luck token to succeed. Doesn't matter what you rolled, you just succeed. And that made it so if you had a luck token, you won't lose your spell. And so I'm going to play around with either a reroll or a modifier for the luck. So it doesn't necessarily guarantee you don't lose your spell. I think that'll be a little bit better. All right. What else do I want to talk about? That's about all I wanted to cover before I start talking about stuff that's going to affect you later, Dave. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
Well, something I've been thinking about lately, and it relates to Toll the Dead, is running dungeons and having the noise and activity that players create as they go through the adventure affect the inhabitants of the dungeon that are near them. And I'm thinking about it a little bit because I know when I started, you could do anything in one room and it wouldn't have any bearing at all in the
Yeah.
next room. And then as I sort of grew as a dungeon master and I read adventures that are published, Gary would do stuff like, these creatures, they'll go and try and alert their friends in the next room if they spot activity. Or there'd be stuff like, if they hear something next door, these creatures will investigate, that kind of stuff. And I guess through osmosis or something, I started learning how to have the parts of the dungeon, especially with factions and so on and things close together, intertwine and interact with each other, which is kind of hard to do unless you write all that stuff on the map or you have a better memory than I am. What struck me is this is kind of, I think, a good DM practice, but there's nothing about it explained in any of the Dungeon Master's guides or any of the books on DMing. So I don't know. I wonder what your reaction is. Have you always run stuff that way?
Yeah. So if you recall, fourth edition was kind of really hard over on here's one room, then here's the next room, and then here's the next room. And it didn't really matter, right? You're just going room to room to room. And near the end of fourth edition, they released a series of adventures that I think they really got fourth edition right finally in. And that was Against the Giants. And you might recognize the map I have on the screen as this stating a little giant chief. But if you look at the room numbers there, you have like the northern complex being 3A through 3D. You have the main hall being 2A, B, and C. The south complex 4B, 4A. The kitchen 5A, 5B, 5C, 5D. And the way they wrote it was all those areas kind of interacted with each other. If you were in the northern wing and you were sneaking through the area with the baby giants, you could rouse them up and then adults would come out of the other rooms. And if you were in the kitchen and you had a fight with the cooks there, then that would attract a hill giant that was in the trophy room dining hall to the west in 5D. So they, kind of took that into account and really finally did a fourth edition adventure that was felt realistic instead of feeling like just point to point, encounter by encounter. I'm playing a war game and it doesn't matter what I do. Right?
I think this kind of design where things that you do can create alerts or bring in encounters or foes from other rooms, it adds an extra note of tension that's really exciting when you're adventuring, because you know that if you play your cards wrong, if you're not careful, you can suddenly have yourself up to your nose in a fight that you might not be able to win. So there's that actual extra tension where your characters are probably going to be able to beat any one encounter worth of fighting. But if you start causing commotion by using Toll the Dead or Shatter or Thunderwave or just being incautious, well, there's a trade-off. There's a risk that you're creating.
Yeah.
And it's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Kate's got a question for you, Dave. What spell system do you prefer? Spell slots, roll to cast, roll to retain, something else?
I've been playing some of the Shadow Dark stuff, and I thought the spell system was really cool to begin with, but I'm starting to sour a little bit on it. I kind of like something where you can plan your resources a little better.
Yeah. You could combine roll to cast or roll to retain with that, how 5e does it, right? Where you have 4 slots, and every time you fail a check, you lose a slot. But you can mix and match your spells in the slots. Like 5e, you prep 4 spells at 3rd level, and you can cast, one of those 4 spells 3 times. And Shadow Dark's not that way, right? So yeah, that's a thing you could do for sure. Justin Alexander. So you want to be the game master, talks a lot about that in his running dungeons section, talks about the interconnection between dungeon denizens and factions. Yeah, and factions is great. Kelsey does that really well in their adventures, where everything's got factions. I was just about to mention that from Doug. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, so Kelsey does that well. It's always good to have factions. The Giant Adventure had, one of the first dungeons out there had factions. You had the orc slaves in the basement that you could, get to battle against the giants. So that was definitely from the start. They had that. I'm bringing up another one. Yeah, here we go. This is good. Let me share this tab. So this is Source of Victory. And he has an adventure set in a caldera that's going to erupt. And so, just like you're saying, David, we might hear sounds in other areas. The very first event might be ominous rumbling, and then gathering embers, and then a cave-in, then a steam jet, and then, finally a cataclysmic eruption at the end. So that's a real neat way to do it too, is just have it be random encounter or random events in your dungeon.
Yeah. My favorite DM tool when I'm running an adventure or a dungeon that somebody else has written is to make a copy of the map and write all over it. I want to write down the foes in different rooms, so I get a perspective of how they might react when players pass nearby or create a commotion nearby. I also like to mark areas where there's sounds that the characters might hear, where there's other effects that they might notice in passing. So that sort of thing I don't overlook when I'm actually running the adventure, and it feels like those are the tools that I need to make it dynamic.
Absolutely. I think Old School Adventures, or no, what is it? Old School Essentials. They have some adventures that they've written where they do that with their maps. And I think it's really, like you're saying, really beneficial. I'm going to bring up a map I did recently that's similar. This is from the adventure in the 2024 DMG, The Fouled Stream. And so, I do exactly what you're talking about, David, where I have on my map notes to myself that just remind me. Because when you have it right there on the map, you don't forget it. Like, for example, there was a skeleton on the ground, and its eyes might flicker blue, which was kind of a foreshadowing of some skeletons they could run into in the other room. And the bullywogs, one of them might have a garret wound on its neck, which would lead the party to maybe negotiate with them if they can see one of them's wounded. Coins glinting in the river, things like that. So yeah, definitely a great idea to roll mark right on your maps.
Yeah, and that avoids a DM faux pas that I've committed on numerous occasions, which is where I start reading the room description of the room that the characters have just entered. And sentence number 1 is, "The door to this room is locked."
Yes. Yep. That is all the time. Let's see. I think I have a good picture of that too. That was from probably B1 in Search of the Unknown. Search of the Unknown. This map here is by John Pintar, and he did maps for a lot of the B1, B2. And I didn't say anything here, but there's something special about this door. And I just, put a note outside the door so I see it when the party comes to it. That's maybe the only one I can think of. There's some other ones that had something special about the door, and that's why I do it. Just put a note before they open the door so I know to go look at the adventure.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this map is really good. And John Pintar did the maps for the B series, the A series, the G series, the D series, Queen of the Demon Web Pits. All really good stuff. Check his stuff out if you're going to run these adventures for sure. Okay. Anything else, David?
That's all I got.
I'm gonna have to kick you off because I'm going to talk about what I'm doing with Vecna
Ravenloft?
next.
Oh,
Yeah,
Vecna, yeah.
Vecna.
Okay, well, I don't want any
Right.
spoilers, so
Okay,
you can tell everybody else how you're going to kick our asses.
will do. Thanks,
Okay.
David.
Bye, folks.
All right, so I'm running the Vecna series of adventures, and they're not that great in my opinion. It feels like another one of the Spelljammer and Planescape, where it's like just a whirlwind tour of stuff, and you don't really do much, and the challenges aren't really hard at all. And so the parties come into chapter 5, which is Death House. Here's the chapters of this adventure. So if you've looked at my chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 DM tips, really ramping it up a lot. Also making it so that there's plenty of spoilers here. So if you're a player, don't watch this part of the video. So Cass isn't like running some master plan and just, the parties as pawns. It's more like he's watching. He's trying to see what's going on. He wants that rod of 7 parts for sure. He's going to try and get it from the party when he can. So then the party just fortuitously had something come up in chapter 4 where they teleported. Now give me the dirt. Where they teleported. And of course, if you teleport there in chapter 4, it can kind of shunt you off into other areas. So I had it shunt them on into chapter 5. And I had replaced some of the Warforged there with the Lord of Blades because the Warforged were way underpowered. So I had the Lord of Blades in there. He got teleported with the party. And so the party's got 2 pieces of the rod of 7 parts. Lord of Blades, I gave the other piece of the rod. They never found it in chapter 4. And then there's one in supposedly Death House, but I got great maps from Heroic Maps for all of Castle Ravenloft. So I'm going to do it in Castle Ravenloft. And Cass will see this as his perfect opportunity to get 4 pieces of the rod of 7 parts, and he will go after the party now too. And Cass will be masquerading as Strahd in the castle. The Warforged Lord of Blades has one of the pieces already, or is hunting for it. If he lost it in the teleportation, I think that'll probably be what happens. So when I do the reading for Castle Ravenloft, I'll have 2 pieces of the rod of 7 parts be 2 of the things the party gets readings for. And then for the third thing, I think I'm just going to roll up a random legendary magic item because the party will be, tier 4 pretty soon. And that'll be what replaces the Sword of Light. Not Dawnbringer, but just Sword. Sun Sword, that's it. So that'll be in there. 2 pieces of the rod of 7 parts. Lord of Blades will be taking the place of Irina, a potential ally of the party, because Koss is going to try and destroy the Lord of Blades and the party and take all the pieces of the rod of 7 parts. So that's what I'm doing. Let me bring up the actual dungeon here. Okay, so we go to Ravenloft main, and I'm using a macro that is teleporting, which is pretty neat. So here we are with Strahd / Koss, 315 hit points of Koss. Koss's stats up here. 100 temporary hit points from the heart instead of only 50. A couple dire wolves will be waiting with them. Those last should be type 3 demons. The dragons that are in the entryway won't be young dragons. They'll be adult dragons. This should wipe the party out if they try and leave, which, that's the point. Gargoyles replaced by stone golems. I might take a gargoyle figure and make it large, though. That'd be better. Let's do that. So, gargoyle. There we go. Yeah. So I do this a lot, where I just, take a monster and then reskin it. So got that. And then if you look at all the random things up here, oh, another fun thing I'm doing. This is cool. At the very top of the tower where the heart is, where there were the halberds trying to protect the heart. Still using halberds here, but I'm making it so that they're basically the spirit of Amarylith is imprisoned within the halberds, and there'll be a chain, a loose chain between all three that runs through an eye socket at the bottom of the halberd shaft and has slack on both ends. And so when the halberds go, they can basically replicate the attacks of Amarylith. So I can do a halberd attack with Amarylith strength and the chain attack to grapple the party. And then these things are flying, so they can just grapple someone and just throw them off the edge. That'll be a good encounter. And if we come back to the main floor here, Ravenloft main, the wandering monsters. So you have Cass or Koss. I should look that up. It might be Koss. Either way. Amarylith, this will take the place of the animated sword. Oh, in place of the witches, I just took night hags. In place of the witches' cats, I took shadow demons that take the form of a cat. And then in place of, I forget what this is, dire wolves are the type 3 demons. In place of shadows, I'll probably might use a combination shadow / shadow demon, so it can still do the shadow strength drain, which is pretty awesome. A zombie swarm instead of the Strahd zombies, and these zombie swarms are challenge rating 8. So the difficulty I'm looking for a level 14 party, which is coming into this, if there's 5 of them, a CR total of about 47 would be near the deadly threshold. So that would be, 3 Amaryliths like I have at the top of the tower. That's over it, so that's pretty dangerous. If I take Cass at 23, and then a couple type 3 demons at 18, that'll put it up near where it's supposed to be. Or if I take like 4 of these guys, that'd be there. And then for the spiders, I took a hell wasp swarm and using that for the spider swarm. Of course, you have the Lord of Blades up there, and he'll have a couple of his lieutenants with him. And this will be the faction that the party can hopefully get on the same side, so they can fight together against Koss. So that's what I'm planning to do. It should be a lot of fun. And this, if I look at the adventure, here we go, share this. So this is taking the betrayer revealed and bringing it into chapter 5. And then there is no rod piece there. So there are 2 pieces there. We'll bring it up to 4. Then I like going to Kryn, but to go to Kryn, I might want to do it at the High Claris Tower. So in Dragonlance, share this, the adventure DL8 Dragons of War is the High Claris Tower, Tracy and Laura Hickman. And if you look at the map of the tower, it's like pretty epic, just like Ravenloft is. Although unfortunately there's no good, third-party maps of this thing yet. So won't have that super cool look like the other one does, but it'll be a cool location for the party to go to find a piece of the Rod of 7 Parts and have them go there at the same time as dragons are attacking there, either in the time of the books where Sturm was there and killed, or some other time. But then I can also bring in Tiamat Takesis into that fight, which will be really cool. Let's see, where's my... Make sure I have any questions covered. I'd love to hear how another DM tries to salvage this mess of adventure. It is really not good. How much of the structure needs to be rearranged so that it makes sense, or at least so that's not such a railroad? Yeah, the key is, I think, Doug, to not let it be a railroad, right? If the party does cool things, let those cool things happen. And then riff off of them so that it's cool and new for you, just as it's cool and new for them. And compress it. Like I'm compressing these chapters together because it's woefully underpowered. I don't know how they play their high level games, if they really play test them, but these high level characters are outrageously powerful. They can take on amazing battles. So I'm going to be compressing it a lot. but trying to get the really cool things to happen. So go on to Kate here. My group really wants to run this after running the Frostbane, so I'm soaking up all the advice I can get. Yeah, just do it. Let the players drive the action. If you look at my videos for chapters 1, 2, and 3, that's how it happened for my group. But you really want to give your players the agency in the adventure, not just be gophers for Cass to get a thing that he steals from them later. That's kind of sucky. Okay, so let's look at the chapters again. Show this tab. Okay, so in chapter 6, the Night of the Blue Fire is pretty cool. This location, the Three Moons Vault. It's a cool location, but the High Claris Tower is even cooler. So I'm probably going to move to there. I probably won't have hardly anything of the theme of this, but I'm going to try and get dragons and dragons, more dragons into it. And then chapter 8, take the stuff from chapter 8, but really mostly for Takesis. Anything I can bring Takesis into this fight. And that might get them 2 pieces of the rod. Not sure exactly if I'll do 2 in that one location. And then, so you've taken 8 out, you've taken 9 out. You only have 7, 10, and 11 left. So for 7, I like Tomb of Annihilation. I might work on a little bit on that, getting it into there. I like Sararak for sure. I like that it's on Earth. And I'd like to take this War of Pandismos and maybe bring it to Orth with Loth attacking like she, in theory, is doing to all the worlds in the Giant Adventures. If you look in the Queen of the Demon Web Pits, there's some really cool stuff going on in there, and there could be that invasion coming to Orth for that, where she's battling against Vecna, and Vecna's in his home realm. So that'd bring chapter 10 into chapter 7, and then whatever you need to do for Vecna at the end there. And Vecna could really play a lot more of a role in chapter 7 and therefore 10 and 11, because he doesn't really appear until 11. So it'd be good to get him into Greyhawk, early into the adventure. So I don't have a broad outline of everything I'm going to do. I'm kind of reacting to the players, and the first step is Ravenloft and facing Cass or Koss. That will be really cool. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to start that tonight, so you'll see what kind of a train wreck that was next time I post that adventure. And yeah, that's it. So that's all I got for you guys tonight. I will see you next week. Don't think we have any guests next week, but in 2 weeks, we have James Indercasso going to be on from Draw Steel. And so bring your Draw Steel questions for James. I really should try and run something for that. I don't know if I'll have time between now and then, but James came to my attention because he wrote an adventure with this guy in it. In fact, a whole bunch of those guys in it that we played one time with Dave DMing for us, and that was a ton of fun. All right. Bye, everyone.